They ignored this starship. A human mechanic made it the ultimate galactic weapon. The galaxy was big, too big for most people to notice what a single human could do. Out on the edges, far from the bright systems and crowded trade hubs, a small spaceport clung to the side of a gray, rocky planet. Most travelers avoided it. Its docks were dusty, its fuel pumps creaked, and the ships there were old or broken. At the far end of the spaceport, among the rusted hulls and empty cargo bays, sat a ship that everyone called a joke, the Rustbird. Its hull was scratched and patched. Its engines rattled when they started. Aliens from nearby sectors laughed at it openly. "Why does a human even bother?" they said. "That ship can't even leave the atmosphere safely." No, one noticed the small figure moving around it. Eli, a human mechanic, worked quietly in the engine bay. His jumpsuit was stained with grease and oil, and his hands were always smudged with grime, but his eyes sparkled with focus and excitement. Where others saw broken parts, he saw possibilities. Eli hummed a tune from old Earth radio as he tightened a bolt on the ship's hull. "One day," he said softly to himself, "they'll all see." He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at the ship. The Rustbird was not much to look at. Its design was old-fashioned, its sensors outdated, its engines barely functional. But Eli had spent months studying it, and in his mind, it was already something incredible. Every panel, every wire, every tube in the ship had a secret purpose. He had improved what seemed broken, fixed what others thought impossible, and redesigned parts in ways no alien engineer had imagined. Most of the other mechanics at the spaceport ignored him. Aliens in their sleek ships came by to refuel or repair, and they laughed openly. "Look at that primitive human," said a tall, green-skinned engineer. "He is wasting his time on that scrap." He never did. He let them laugh. Let them think he was just another human who didn't understand the galaxy. Because he knew the truth. Humans had a way of surprising everyone, even when they were overlooked. Eli climbed into the cockpit and ran a hand over the old control panel. Lights flickered in response to his touch, though they were dim and uneven. He smiled. "They think I'm foolish. Let them watch." The galaxy was moving faster than most humans realized. News traveled slowly in these distant regions, but even here, Eli had heard whispers. A new fleet was arriving. A fleet that tested planets and civilizations, that showed the strong who ruled and crushed the weak without mercy. The aliens in the nearby systems were panicking. They sent messages back and forth, their words sharp with fear. But humans were not on anyone's mind. No one considered them a threat. In fact, most aliens didn't even bother to study human technology. The Rustbird was a joke to them, a ship too old to matter, piloted by a species too small to care about. And that was exactly why Eli smiled. He opened a compartment in the floor of the cockpit and pulled out a small, glowing device. It was a piece of human ingenuity he had designed himself, something he called the core modulator. No alien had ever seen anything like it. It could redirect energy, stabilize systems, and, if used correctly, give the ship powers beyond anything conventional science could explain. Eli set it carefully into the ship's main engine. Sparks flew, but not dangerously. They were controlled, precise. The ship hummed in response. It was alive now, in a way. A quiet, growing energy filled the cockpit, and Eli felt a thrill in his chest. "You're going to be amazing," he whispered to the ship. Outside, alien ships passed the spaceport without noticing. Sleek, gleaming vessels, filled with engineers and scientists, moved as though they owned the galaxy. They looked down at the human spaceport and sneered. They didn't know that in this small corner of the galaxy, something extraordinary was taking shape. Eli worked through the night. He adjusted the engines, rewired the sensors, and tested every system. Occasionally, he glanced at the viewport. The stars were bright, and the galaxy stretched out endlessly. Somewhere out there, the new fleet would soon arrive. Eli knew he had limited time. But he was confident humans had a way of making the impossible possible. By morning, the Rustbird looked almost the same to anyone passing by. Its hull was still scratched, its engines still rattled. But Eli knew the truth. The ship was no longer just a patchwork of old parts. It had a heart, a mind, and a will. The other mechanics came by. A few shook their heads. "You're wasting your time, human," said one alien with blue feathers along its arms. "This ship will never matter." Eli smiled politely. "We'll see," he said simply. A young human boy watched him from the far end of the dock. He had come with his parents to see the spaceport, but he was drawn to the rustbird. "Do you think it can really fly?" the boy asked. Eli crouched down and ruffled the boy's hair. "Not just fly," he said with a grin. "It will surprise everyone." As the day went on, messages arrived from nearby colonies. Panic was spreading. Rumors about the incoming fleet were everywhere. Entire planets were preparing defenses. Governments were sending fleets, weapons, and armies. And yet, humans were mostly ignored. They were scattered, small, and unarmed. To the galaxy, humans were not a threat. But Eli had never been concerned with what others thought. Humans had always relied on their minds and their courage. The galaxy could underestimate them all it wanted. Eli had plans, and the first step was simple. Make the Rustbird the fastest, smartest, most unpredictable ship in the sector. He returned to the engine bay, his hands moving quickly. He installed a series of small conduits and energy loops. He tested a new type of shield that absorbed energy instead of just blocking it. He laughed quietly when a small burst of light bounced harmlessly off the shield during testing. "Perfect," he said. Hours passed like minutes. Eli barely ate, barely slept. He was lost in his work. And slowly, quietly, the Rustbird changed. Systems that should have been broken worked. Sensors that should have been outdated became precise. Engines that should have sputtered hummed smoothly. Finally, Eli leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at the ship and felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel: pride. The ship wasn't finished, not yet. But it was alive. It was ready for the galaxy to notice, though no one would notice the way he imagined. Because when the new fleet arrived, it wouldn't be power or weapons that made the difference. It would be cleverness, creativity, and the human mind. Eli turned off the lights in the engine bay and walked to the cockpit. He looked out at the stars, and for a moment, he imagined what would happen when the aliens finally tried to take him seriously. The galaxy thought humans were weak. They thought the Rustbird was just junk. They were wrong. And when the time came, Eli thought with a quiet smile, humans would make the galaxy regret ignoring them. The galaxy had a way of ignoring humans. That was something Eli had learned early, and he had learned to use it. While alien fleets bragged about their technology, while alien engineers polished sleek ships and argued over the tiniest improvements, Eli worked quietly in the engine room of the Rustbird. The morning sun barely reached the spaceport, its thin light sliding across the gray concrete and rusty hulls. Eli crouched over the main engine, a small device in his hand. He called it the core modulator, and it was the key to everything he had in mind. The device pulsed with a faint blue glow, almost alive, almost like it knew what Eli wanted it to do. He had spent months developing it. Every alien engineer, every galactic expert, had dismissed the idea as impossible. But humans had a way of thinking differently. They could take old parts, broken systems, and ideas that didn't make sense to anyone else, and turn them into something extraordinary. Eli connected the modulator to the energy conduits running through the ship. Sparks danced briefly, then vanished into the hum of the engines. The ship vibrated lightly, almost like it was waking from a long sleep. "Good," Eli muttered. "Now we test." He flicked switches, washed the displays, and slowly began to push the ship's systems beyond their normal limits. The engines, once shaky and weak, responded immediately. They hummed like a living thing, steady and smooth. Sensors came online one by one, scanning the spaceport and even the surrounding atmosphere with perfect precision. Every system was reacting, not just mechanically, but intelligently. The Rustbird was learning. Eli leaned back, smiling. "Not bad for a human mechanic, huh?" he whispered. The ship didn't answer, at least, not in words, but the gentle hum seemed almost like agreement. He had discovered a secret hidden deep in the ship's core the week before, a rare energy source. It was small, almost invisible, tucked inside an old containment unit that alien engineers had ignored. It was too weak for them, too strange, too unpredictable. But Eli understood it. He had read ancient human schematics and combined them with alien theory until he had created a system that could use this energy safely and brilliantly. When he connected the energy source to the modulator, the change was immediate. Systems that should have failed operated flawlessly. The shields became stronger, more flexible. Sensors could now detect things that no alien technology could. And the engines were faster, almost like they had a mind of their own. Eli laughed quietly, a soft sound that echoed in the empty engine room. They all said I was wasting my time, he said. They were wrong. Every single one of them. Outside the spaceport, alien ships passed by, sleek and polished. Their pilots looked down at the dock, and some laughed. Why does a human waste time on that scrap? One asked. It's useless. He didn't need to. He knew what they couldn't see. A human could turn old scraps into something far more powerful than their fancy ships. They couldn't imagine a ship that thought differently, that adapted, that used creativity instead of raw strength. He worked through the day. He installed new conduits that rerouted energy instantly where it was needed. He tested the shields against bursts of energy, and they bent and flexed without breaking. He even experimented with the ship's cloaking systems, making it invisible to sensors for short periods. Every test succeeded. Every failure taught him something new. Sometimes, humans from nearby colonies came to watch. They didn't understand everything, but they could see the difference. One boy, wide-eyed and eager, watched Ellie adjust a control panel. It's like magic, the boy whispered. Eli crouched down and smiled at him. Not magic, he said. Just thinking differently. By evening, the ship had changed completely. Where it had once been slow and clunky, it now moved with a quiet grace. Where it had once been fragile, it now absorbed energy like it was nothing. Where it had once been ignored, it now held potential that no alien could understand. Eli ran a final test, activating the system he called the adaptive core. It allowed the ship to respond to unexpected situations automatically, using its own logic to solve problems faster than any pilot could. For the first time, the Rustbird moved without instruction, gliding across the dock with intelligence and precision. Eli leaned back, breathing heavily, a proud smile spreading across his face. You're ready, he said. Almost ready. The galaxy, meanwhile, continued to ignore him. Reports came in from nearby sectors. The fleet was moving closer. Entire planets were preparing defenses. Governments argued over strategies, and yet humans were dismissed. They were small, scattered, and weak, and the galaxy had no reason to take them seriously. But Eli didn't worry. He had something they didn't: creativity. Humans had survived on thinking, not size. On adapting, not overpowering. On finding ways to make impossible things happen. And Eli had just made the impossible happen with the Rustbird. That night, he stayed in the cockpit, staring at the stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, the fleet would soon arrive. They would bring their strongest ships, their cleverest scientists, their most advanced technology. And they would look at humans the same way everyone else had. Weak, primitive, unimportant. Eli smiled at the thought. Let them come, he whispered. They won't understand until it's too late. He spent the rest of the night running simulations. Each one tested the ship's systems against hypothetical attacks, energy pulses, sensor disruptions, evasive maneuvers. The Rustbird responded perfectly every time. It was clever, adaptive, and unpredictable. The humans who watched him couldn't understand it, but they could feel it. Something was happening here, something that would change how the galaxy saw humans forever. By morning, Eli stepped out of the cockpit. He wiped his hands and looked around the spaceport. Everything seemed normal. The ships of the nearby aliens were still sleek and polished. The engineers still laughed. But Eli knew the truth. The Rustbird was no longer just a ship. It was a marvel of human ingenuity. And soon, the galaxy would pay attention. He walked to the hangar doors and looked out at the stars. Far away, in the darkness of space, small flashes of light appeared, the first scouts of the fleet. The moment was coming. Eli could feel it in his chest, a steady, thrilling beat of anticipation. He returned to the cockpit, checking systems one last time. Every gauge read perfectly. Every system was online. The ship was ready. All it needed was the moment to prove itself. Eli leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Let's show them what humans can do," he said. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the galaxy remained unaware of the storm that was about to arrive. The Rustbird was no longer just a forgotten ship. It was a machine of human brilliance, clever beyond imagination, and it waited quietly for the moment it would change everything. Eli shut down the lights in the cockpit and stared out at the stars. The galaxy didn't believe humans could be extraordinary. That was fine. Humans had never needed the galaxy to believe. They just needed the chance to prove it. And soon, that chance would come. The galaxy had a way of underestimating humans. That was about to change. Far above the gray planet where the Rustbird rested, the alien fleet appeared like a wave of silver and light. Ships of every size and shape moved with perfect precision, engines glowing, weapons ready. They were the best the galaxy had to offer, a demonstration of power and skill meant to remind everyone who ruled. Down at the spaceport, aliens moved nervously. Engineers adjusted panels, pilots checked systems, and the fleet's leaders barked orders. And yet, almost invisibly, the human colony remained calm. Almost. Eli sat in the cockpit of the Rustbird, calm and focused. His hands rested lightly on the controls. Every system was ready. Every sensor was online. Every hidden mechanism in the ship hummed quietly, waiting. The alien scouts were the first to notice. They detected the small human ship and paused, almost confused. The Rustbird was old, scratched, and seemingly fragile. It looked like junk. Their leader, a tall, shimmering creature with tentacle-like arms, laughed. "Send a warning," it ordered. "Tell the humans to leave their ship behind. It is irrelevant." The message flashed across the human colony's communication systems. Other humans might have panicked, but Eli didn't. He opened a simple response. "We are here. We are ready." The aliens didn't know what to expect. They thought humans were weak, unprepared, and incapable of resisting. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Eli activated the adaptive core. The ship's movements became fluid, almost alive. It rose from the dock smoothly, engines humming quietly. Its hull reflected starlight in odd patterns, confusing sensors. Alien ships tried to scan it. They failed. The readings were inconsistent, impossible, as if the ship had more than one position at the same time. The aliens frowned. Their leaders had seen many tricks, many technologies, but this was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Eli didn't attack. He didn't need to. The ship's systems were designed to confuse and adapt. A small laser beam fired at the Rustbird, and the shields absorbed the energy, redirecting it harmlessly into the engines. The shot that should have damaged them instead made the ship faster, stronger, more precise. Eli smiled. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. The alien fleet advanced. They tried different strategies, flanking, surrounding, scanning. Every attempt failed. Every plan they made, the Rustbird countered automatically. It moved in ways no conventional ship could. It seemed to anticipate their actions, dodging, gliding, and even appearing in places no one thought possible. From the observation decks of nearby human colonies, people watched in awe. They had always believed humans could survive, but they had never imagined such brilliance. Here was a single human, one mechanic, turning a forgotten rusty ship into a marvel. And he didn't need a fleet or armies to do it. Just his mind. The aliens grew frustrated. "It is impossible," one whispered, almost to itself. "It should be dead, destroyed, irrelevant." But it is perfect. Too perfect. Eli remained calm. He watched, studied, and adjusted. Small, hidden systems shifted. A minor energy surge here, a subtle sensor recalibration there. He was not fighting with weapons. He was fighting with cleverness, with creativity, with human thinking. A large cruiser fired a pulse weapon designed to disable ships instantly. The energy beam struck the rustbird, but the shields bent it harmlessly around the hull. The energy was absorbed, feeding the engines and powering the adaptive systems further. The ship darted out of the cruiser's path, almost teasing it. The aliens had never seen a ship do such a thing. Eli grinned. "You still don't get it, do you?" he whispered. "It's not about size. It's not about weapons. It's about thinking." The fleet tried again. A group of ships surrounded the rustbird, intending to trap it. Eli activated the cloaking system. The ship disappeared from their sensors, vanished entirely. The aliens spun their ships in confusion, scanning frantically, but the rustbird had already moved behind them, safe and untouchable. Every move he made was clever. Every system he had designed worked perfectly. The aliens were being outsmarted by a single human mechanic, a tiny species they had considered irrelevant. Eli thought of the young boy who had watched him months ago. "You'll see," he whispered, smiling. "Humans can do incredible things." The alien leaders were now in disbelief. Their fleets were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their technology was unmatched. And yet, this one human ship had turned their power into a display of futility. Every attack they made failed. Every plan they executed was countered automatically, effortlessly. Eli didn't feel pride in arrogance. He felt pride in the cleverness of humans. He remembered all the engineers who had laughed at him, all the skeptics who had said humans couldn't make a difference. And now they would learn the truth, not through violence, but through brilliance. Small ships tried kamikaze-style rams. The ship's systems adjusted, predicting movement and shifting trajectories. The attacks failed, bouncing harmlessly into space. Larger ships tried energy nets, beams, and magnetic pulses. The rustbird countered them all, bending the energy, redirecting it, or absorbing it entirely. For the first time, the aliens began to respect humans. Not because they had defeated anyone with sheer force, but because humans had done what no alien had thought possible. They had turned a scrap ship into a living machine of intelligence. Eli activated the final system, the one he had built in secret. The energy rebound array. It allowed the ship to take incoming energy, store it, and release it in controlled bursts. A small pulse went out, harmless but precise, knocking one of the larger cruisers slightly off course. The aliens panicked. Their perfectly coordinated fleet was now chaotic. The human colonies watched in amazement. They had feared the worst, but now they saw humans could not only survive, they could outthink the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Eli laughed quietly to himself. "You thought we were weak. You thought this ship was worthless. You were wrong." There was no need. The display had been enough. The aliens withdrew, confused, frustrated, and humbled. They had expected an easy victory, and instead they had been outsmarted by a single human ship. The young boy from the colony watched the retreating fleet, eyes wide. "Humans, they're incredible," he whispered. Eli leaned back in the cockpit. The adrenaline slowly faded, leaving a calm, steady pride. The rustbird hovered quietly in space, battered only by imagination and human ingenuity. The ship had survived against the odds, against ridicule, and against the galaxy's most advanced forces. The fleet disappeared into the stars, leaving the humans to wonder what had just happened. Stories would be told, legends would grow, and humans would finally begin to be seen as a force in the galaxy, not because of violence, not because of numbers, but because of intelligence, creativity, and courage. Eli sat quietly for a moment. "We're just getting started," he said. The rustbird hummed in agreement. And far above the planet, the galaxy had begun to notice humans. They had been ignored, underestimated, dismissed. But now, a single mechanic and his brilliant adaptive ship had proven that humans could not be ignored any longer. For the first time, humans were being respected, not for their power, but for their mind. And Eli knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate a human. The alien fleet had retreated, leaving behind a quiet, amazed galaxy. No one spoke of destruction. No one spoke of victory. They spoke only of the human ship that had survived impossible odds. Back at the gray spaceport, the rustbird hovered gently, its engines purring like a content animal. Eli stepped out of the cockpit, wiping grease from his hands. He looked around at the small crowd of humans who had gathered. Their eyes were wide, full of wonder and respect. You did it, whispered the young boy who had followed him all these months. You really did it. Ellie smiled, bending down to ruffle the boy's hair. We did it, he said softly. Humans can do incredible things when we put our minds to it. Never forget that. The humans cheered quietly, careful not to draw attention. They had survived, not through weapons or armies, but through cleverness, creativity, and courage. And now, they were finally being noticed. News traveled slowly, but it traveled. Across nearby colonies, whispers turned into stories. Across distant systems, alien scouts reported back the Rustbird had survived the fleet. Humans were clever. Humans were dangerous. Not in the sense of violence, but in intelligence. For the first time in the galaxy, humans were being taken seriously. Governments began to reconsider treaties. Scientists wanted to study human methods. Engineers wanted to understand how a species so small and underestimated could produce such brilliance. Eli returned to the cockpit. He ran systems checks again, though he knew the Rustbird was ready. Everything worked perfectly. Every shield, every sensor, every adaptive system responded instantly. The ship was a marvel. Not because it was the biggest or strongest, but because it was designed in a way no alien could have imagined. The aliens were cautious now. Fleets no longer laughed at humans. They no longer assumed humans were weak. Instead, they began to observe. They asked questions, and when they couldn't find answers, they wondered. Eli stood on the observation deck of the spaceport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere far away, the alien fleet had regrouped. Somewhere else, their leaders were talking about humans, trying to understand. But Eli didn't worry. Humans had always survived against impossible odds. And now, they had shown the galaxy that brains, courage, and cleverness were just as important as numbers or weapons. He thought of the young boy again. We're showing them, he said quietly. One step at a time, humans are proving themselves. At the colony, humans began to rebuild. Engineers studied alien techniques but applied their own ideas. Scientists experimented with old technology, imagining new possibilities. Children played with scraps of metal and circuitry, dreaming of what they might create one day. The galaxy had underestimated them, but humans didn't need recognition to succeed. They only needed opportunity. The Rustbird became a symbol. Not because it had destroyed the fleet, but because it represented something far greater: human ingenuity, perseverance, and imagination. Other ships looked sleek and perfect, but the Rustbird had something no alien ship had: a mind behind it, a human mind, clever, adaptive, and relentless. Eli walked through the hangar, checking small repairs. He smiled at each panel, each wire, each glowing device. To the aliens, this was a simple ship. To him, it was a masterpiece. Messages came from distant systems, tentative at first. Requests for human assistance, offers to collaborate, invitations to share knowledge. The galaxy was beginning to respect humans, and Eli knew this was only the beginning. A delegation from a neighboring star system arrived at the spaceport. They were cautious, polite, curious. One of them, a tall blue-skinned engineer, spoke carefully. We have never seen a species like yours, it said. Your technology, your methods, incredible. Eli nodded politely. Humans have always found ways to survive, he said. And to solve problems no one else can. The delegation asked questions, and Eli answered with patience. He did not boast. He did not claim to be the best. He only explained what humans could do when they thought differently, when they didn't give up, when they looked for solutions rather than excuses. As the visitors left, the young boy ran to Eli. Will humans always be underestimated? He asked. Eli crouched down and smiled. At first, yes, he said, but we don't need them to believe in us. We only need to prove it. And when we do, the galaxy will remember. In the weeks that followed, humans in the sector began to change. They worked harder, dreamed bigger, and experimented more boldly. The Rustbird became a training ship, a symbol of what humans could achieve when they used their minds. Young engineers studied its systems, learning not just how to build a ship, but how to think creatively, how to adapt, how to solve problems in ways no alien could imagine. Eli continued to work quietly, never seeking fame. He fixed systems, tested new ideas, and prepared for the future. For him, it was not about glory. It was about proving one simple truth. Humans were clever, resourceful, and capable of incredible things, and the galaxy had finally started to notice. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet set, Eli stood on a ridge overlooking the spaceport. The rustbird gleamed in the last light, quiet, ready, alive. The boy ran up beside him, pointing at the ship. "They'll come back, won't they?" he asked. "Maybe," he said, "but it won't matter. Humans have shown what we can do, and every time someone underestimates us, we'll prove them wrong." The boy looked up at the sky, imagining ships and stars, thinking of the adventures humans could have. Eli watched him, remembering himself at that age, dreaming of something impossible. The galaxy had ignored humans for too long, but now, one mechanic and his clever ship had shown that even the smallest, most overlooked species could make a difference. And somewhere far away, the alien fleet reconsidered its plans. They had met a species that could think, adapt, and innovate in ways they could not predict. They had learned a lesson they would never forget. Humans could not be dismissed. Eli walked back to the rustbird, placing his hands on the hull. "You did well," he said quietly. "But this is only the beginning." The ship hummed softly, as if agreeing. Humans would continue to explore, to invent, to surprise the galaxy. They didn't need to be the largest species, the strongest fleet, or the most powerful armies. They only needed their minds, their courage, and their determination. And the galaxy had finally learned, never underestimate a human. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the spaceport, Eli and the rustbird waited quietly. The stars stretched endlessly above them, full of possibilities. And humans, clever and unstoppable, were ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at them next. Because the rustbird had proven one undeniable truth. In a universe full of power and precision, creativity, intelligence, and courage were the greatest weapons of all, and humans had them in abundance.